Hello everybody, my name is Davis and welcome back to another video, and today we are here for another severe weather breakdown. Now in this video, we're going to be discussing an upcoming pattern of significant severe weather across portions of the Central Plains and the Midwest, and also a developing tropical threat out into portions of the Gulf and the Caribbean. So let's go ahead and get right into it, but before we do, make sure to click that like and subscribe button down below, and let's get started. The SPC outlook for today mentions a slight risk of severe weather across portions of central Oklahoma and south central Kansas. This is driven by a damaging wind and a large hail risk, but there is a 2% tornado probability in play here for sections of central Oklahoma and southern Kansas. I personally don't think this is going to be anything too intense, and we're going to talk about why later in this video, but do make sure that you do have a tornado action plan in place. I will say if there were to be any sort of tornado threat, in my opinion, it would likely come around the Tulsa region, maybe just off to the west of the Tulsa region. So as we go into tomorrow here, we're going to be talking about a bit more of a significant threat for severe weather, but still relatively tame across portions of east central Texas. Taking a look at our tornado probabilities, you'll notice that there also is just a 2% tornado risk in play for tomorrow, but I wouldn't be shocked to see this get upgraded to a 5% risk, as instability values do look to be quite high. Now, our damaging wind probabilities there, again, we've got ourselves 5 different 5% probabilities, one of them in southern Florida, one across portions of Appalachia, one across portions of East Texas, one across parts of the Four Corner states, and one back up in the Pacific Northwest. And then also we do have a 15% hatched hail threat across portions of east central Texas, so do make sure that you do have your car inside the garage tomorrow if you are out here in this portion of the Lone Star State. Now, as we go into Monday, this is where things start to get a little bit more serious, and we are going to be talking about the very real potential for a severe weather or potentially a localized tornado outbreak. Now, I don't think that Monday in particular looks too intense, although a slight risk of severe weather has been in effect now for a couple of days, extending from southern Minnesota back into portions of far northeastern Colorado, and I do think that this will likely be driven by a all hazards in play type situation. So again, if you're out here in this area, make sure you do have multiple ways to receive alerts, and we will be live covering this event, obviously, if things do get too intense. And a day that we'll definitely be live for covering is going to be Tuesday. I actually do think that Tuesday has the very real potential to be, again, a localized tornado outbreak. Our slight risk goes from southern Wisconsin back into north central Texas around the DFW Metroplex region, and we're going to talk about the areas that I think have the greatest potential to see severe weather in this slight risk area later in this video. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about this event that we've got going on for tonight, because I actually do think it's a pretty interesting one. If we take a look at this sounding here, this is pulled right from along the Kansas-Oklahoma state line there, just northwest of the Bartlesville area. You'll notice that this is a very, very minor sounding for a tornado threat, I should say. You'll notice that we've only got 21 joules per kilogram of CAPE within the first 3 kilometers of the atmosphere. That's definitely not going to help matters, but that's definitely not the only thing killing our setup. We don't even have ourselves 200 SRH within the first 3 kilometers of the atmosphere, so it's really not going to be enough to fuel any sort of tornado threat. The question is whether or not it could fuel a severe thunderstorm threat, and I do personally think so, just because we do have actually decent wind shear values out here in this area. The higher you get up into the atmosphere anyway. I will say in the lower levels, shear values are a little bit lacking. Our surface CAPE values are at 2,800 joules per kilogram, so not too terrible, but our mixed layer CAPE is just abysmal. Again, taking a look at our SARS analogs, you'll notice that we do have one 3-inch hail analog, but again, that is just a huge outlier. Whenever you've only got one analog, it's not necessarily reliable just to, trust that one analog and what it says, so don't necessarily take that too seriously. Our lapse rates ranging anywhere from 5.8 to 7.9 Celsius per kilometer, depending on what layer of the atmosphere you look at. Really not too impressive of a sounding. But I'll tell you what, Monday's setup actually has been bringing some impressive soundings. This is taken from the eastern portions of South Dakota. You'll notice that we've got ourselves decent SRH values ranging anywhere from 250 all the way up to 400, depending on what layer of the atmosphere you look at, which is actually pretty impressive. Our wind shear values are sitting between 40 and 45 knots, so again, decent. Our 3 CAPE values are at 81 joules per kilogram, so again, pretty decent. Our lapse rates are sitting anywhere between 6.6 all the way up to 7.3 Celsius per kilometer, depending on which layer of the atmosphere you look at there. And we've got ourselves 4,300 joules per kilogram of surface CAPE. Now, you'll notice our temperature to dew point ratio is actually pretty impressive, 72 to 80 degrees, but you'll notice that those dew points just absolutely fall off the higher you get up into the atmosphere, and that could potentially promote a large to potentially even a very large hail threat. Again, taking a look at those SARS analogs there, you'll notice that we do have some significant hail analogs on the board. Again, our hodograph, not super impressive. It could have a little bit more impressive of a wind profile, I think, but overall, not too shabby. So definitely be on the lookout there in portions of South Dakota on Monday for a couple of tornadoes. But I'll tell you what, there's also another area that we're going to be watching on Monday. It's not just South Dakota. This is a sounding taken from central portions of Kansas for Monday's event here. Now, This is really kind of a Monday night, Tuesday morning thing for central Kansas, but I would like to note there is the very real potential for a brief tornado out here in this area. Now, our shear values are okay. They're really not super impressive and probably are going to be the thing that's lacking the most out of this environment, sitting anywhere between 30 and 35 knots of shear, depending on which layer of the atmosphere you look at. Our SRH values are actually pretty nice, though, sitting at about 340, 350. If we take a look at our surface cape values, you'll see they're at about 2,700 joules per kilogram there. Our temperature to dew point ratio is sitting at 71 to 76 degrees, with the steep drop-off in dew points the higher you get into the atmosphere, so potentially the threat for small hail could exist. Our 3 cape values could be more impressive. They're only sitting at about 25, so that may be a killing factor as well for this setup. The photograph's extremely messy, storm slinky extremely messy, but still, I wouldn't rule out a brief tornado across portions of the southern plains on Monday. But again, the southern plains' more impressive threat for a couple of tornadoes is going to come on Tuesday here. I don't know if I was saying Sunday, but I meant Monday when I said that. But Tuesday here actually does look pretty impressive for the Central Plains. This is a sounding taken from right along the Oklahoma-Kansas state line. I think technically it's in Kansas, like west of Coffeyville. You'll notice that our temperature to dew point ratio, very, very nice, very impressive, 70 to 75 degrees. Again, our 3 cape values are sitting at 54 joules per kilogram. Our surface cape at 2,500 joules per kilogram. We've got ourselves a pretty nice amount of wind shear in the environment, although it could be a little bit more impressive, and that could get more impressive as we get closer to the event and we're able to see the HRRR come in, as it is a higher resolution model. Again, our lapse rates there supportive of potentially a large hail threat. Our storm slinky, not too shabby, turned at 71 degrees. Our photograph's very wonky, but again, not too terrible of a setup there for portions of Kansas on Tuesday. And I really do think that this is going to get more impressive with time as we get closer and closer to the event. So again, if you are out here in Kansas or Oklahoma, make sure that you do have a tornado action plan in play for Tuesday. And again, it's not just Kansas and Oklahoma that's facing this tornado threat, guys. That's where the threat's going to be the greatest. But again, it's really going to be everywhere from sections of North Texas all the way back through parts of Illinois that are at the very least looking out for a severe weather threat. And again, potentially even an elevated tornado risk as we go into the evening time hours on Tuesday and the early morning time hours on Wednesday in portions of Wisconsin. I mean, just look at this sounding, guys. It's not super impressive and it's a little bit contaminated, but you'll notice that we've got 200 joules per kilogram of CAPE within the first 3 kilometers of the atmosphere. We've got ourselves decent shear values, so there's definitely at least an environment in play for the potential of tornadic development all the way back into sections of the Midwest. So taking a look at the north-central United States, okay, this is on the NAM 3-kilometer model here on Tropical Tidbits. This is the Future Track Radar. This is going to be for Monday's event. You'll see by 3 p.m. we've got some thunderstorms firing along a line in portions of North Dakota that could potentially promote a brief damaging wind threat, but our more impressive threat for severe weather will come with this cluster of storms here that develops along the South Dakota-North Dakota state line. I do think that if any of these cells are discrete, we could potentially see the isolated chance for a couple of tornadoes, maybe a very brief chance at a strong tornado there, but I don't think that that's really in the cards for this event in general. By 7 p.m., we're taking a look at this storm mode, and again, you'll notice it's mostly linear at this point, but as I stated earlier, going back down to Kansas, there's going to be the very real potential for another band of storms to develop that could potentially bring some damaging winds and a couple of QLCS tornadoes. By 11 p.m., this is really just a huge damaging wind and rain bag for pretty much all of the central plains, and that kind of continues throughout the nighttime hours. So after that, we'll go and take a look at the south central United States. First, we're going to be taking a look at tonight's event. You'll notice that by 6 p.m. here, we've got supercells firing kind of along a line there in portions of southern Kansas. It's likely going to be after 6 p.m. by the time you're watching this video, so we'll see if this verifies. But these will continue to head off to the south, again, potentially producing some large hail, some damaging wind gusts, getting at their most intense point. Mostly, the NAM has been, and the HRRR have been pretty consistent on kind of north-central Oklahoma through northeast Oklahoma. So make sure you do have a tornado action plan in place just in case. But again, it kind of just looks like your typical damaging windbag here in portions of northern Oklahoma for tonight. Now, obviously, that's not it. All right, we go into what we were talking about earlier. Monday's event, potentially we see a couple more supercells across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And then again, we've got Tuesday's event to look out for. And unfortunately, the NAM on Tropical Tidbits doesn't quite reach out as far as we'd like it to. It really only captures Monday night's event here. Again, taking a look at it, you'll notice that we do have a pretty impressive squall line there. And again, potentially a big old bow echo line of storms producing damaging winds of 70 to 80 miles an hour across the OKC metro. Again, unfortunately, the Future Track Radar does not reach out far enough with the NAM model on Tropical Tidbits to see Tuesday's event quite yet, but we can kind of see the very, very early morning time hours there of Tuesday's event. So Before we end off this video, we've got a couple more things to talk about. Firstly, we are obviously on a very, very historic date for tornadic anniversaries. I don't usually bring things like this up in videos, especially forecast videos, but this is the anniversary of the largest tornado of all time. This is the 12-year anniversary of the El Reno, Oklahoma tornado. This tornado was 2.6 miles wide. It ended up killing 8, injuring 26. Obviously, unfortunately, 3 of those fatalities coming from storm chasers, the Samaras family. Again, rest in peace. Obviously, a very disastrous tornado, the likes of which that we really haven't seen something quite like since. So again, obviously, it's been 12 years, but we don't want to forget about this tornado because this is one that I think that a lot of people may just start to look past if we do eventually end up getting a tornado that's slightly larger than that, and I don't think that should ever happen with this because this was such a significant catastrophe in the storm chasing community, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. But anyway, not only that, this is also the anniversary of the May 31st, 1985 Ohio Valley / Great Lakes tornado outbreak, with the Niles, Ohio through Wheatland, Pennsylvania F5 tornado being the strongest tornado of the event. This tornado ended up injuring 310, killing 18, and it tracked nearly a 50-mile path across northeast Ohio and northwest Pennsylvania. A couple other significant tornadoes. We did have a tornado that moved through the Cotranchen area in Pennsylvania here. Again, I'm not too sure how to pronounce that, but I've done some research on this tornado, also very significant. Again, killed 16, injured 125. Overall, a very devastating day for portions of the Ohio Valley. Over 1,000 were injured, 88 lost their lives. So again, don't just remember the El Reno tornado. Don't forget about the May 31st, 1985 event. Now, before we end off here, I do want to mention one last thing. Our hurricane threat in the Gulf of whatever you want to call it, as well as the Caribbean, is starting to become a little bit more realistic as we get closer to the event. Now, again, is this set in stone? No. Is it a possibility? Yes. This is 200 hours out on the GFS. It's the beginning of hurricane season. It's throwing out all these fantasy runs, but I do want to note there is the very real potential for the development of at least a tropical storm in these areas and potentially a low-end hurricane. This is hour 234 here on June 10th. It has it making landfall. The 12Z run of the GFS does the most fully loaded recent run at the time of filming. It has it making landfall near Tampa, Florida. There again, you shouldn't take the landfall locations or the exact strength too seriously quite yet, but it is worth noting that if things were to play out like this would be a Category 2 hurricane most likely, making landfall there at 980 millibar low pressure system, kind of near the area where both Hurricane Idalia and Hurricane Helene have made landfall pretty recently, so look out for that. If we go back to the 6C run of the GFS, you'll notice that it does kind of have that same exact track with the same exact intensity, except for it has it riding up the east coast, even further east, after it makes landfall in Florida the first time, potentially bringing some flooding rain into portions of northern New England there. Back over to the 0Z run of the GFS, we have it making landfall at a much weaker intensity and a little bit further south, and the 18Z run having it even further south and even weaker. So again, take this all with a grain of salt, guys. We are still over 200 hours away from this happening, but it is worth noting that the chance for it is increasing with the signals on the GFS. Now, one last thing, I promise, for real this time. I do want to quickly thank all of our members. As always, I'm sorry I forgot to give a shout out at the last forecast, but again, you guys are what helps keep this channel running. Thank you guys for all your support. If you do want to become a member, make sure to do so by clicking the link down in the description. You'll get access to exclusive content, early access to certain videos, shout outs at the end of every forecast, custom stickers to use in chat, and more. So shout out to all the members. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Stay safe.